snow glows white on the mountain tonight, not a footprint to be seen. A kingdom of isolation, and it looks like I'm the queen. The wind is howling like this swirling storm inside. Couldn't keep it in, heaven knows I tried. Don't let them in, don't let them see. Be the good girl you always have to be. Conceal, don't feel, don't let them know. Well, now they know. Let it go. Can't hold it back anymore.
Leave this open.
Let it go, let it go. Turn away and slam the door. I don't care what they're going to say. Let the storm rage on. The cold never bothered me anyway. It's funny how some distance makes everything seem small. And the fears that once controlled me can't get to me at all. It's time to see what I can do to test the limits and break through. No right, no wrong, no rules for me. I'm free. Let it go, let it go. I am the wind that sky. Let it go, let it go. You never see me cry. Flurries through the air into the ground. My soul is spiraling in frozen fractals all around. And one thought crystallizes like an icy blast. I'm never going back. The past is in the past. Let it go. Cold never bothered me anyway.
Wow, Andrew, thank you so much for being here, ladies and gentlemen. Andrew Synowiec,
Yeah.
we're here in the House of Sin studio in an undisclosed location
Yeah.
in Los Angeles, California. So that was Andrew's mix off of Let It Go from, of course, the hit Disney movie Frozen, which as a recent parent of a 2-year-old, we've start to become much more familiar with. So you're going to be a real hero in the household, knowing that we're hearing your beautiful guitar work
I'm sorry.
on a great song. It should be said that it's one of a select few songs that have made it into the Billions Club in terms of number of plays and number of views on YouTube. So you've been heard with a very select crowd in terms of those numbers. So congratulations to you.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I'm curious. This being such a big hit, how did you get affiliated with Disney? How did you get selected to play on the soundtrack?
Sheer dumb luck, I think. I mean, I literally just kind of an email came in. There's a service called Dateline here in LA, and usually when you see an email from Dateline, you know, okay, this is going to be something good. It was funny actually because you know, you don't know what these things are necessarily.
Mhm.
So I was booked to do a session for my friend Susie Sider. She's an incredible composer, arranger, conductor, and you know, it was like, I don't know, Thursday afternoon or whatever. And I get this email, oh, can you be at Warner Brothers Thursday afternoon? I'm like, oh man, shoot, what should I do? Let me just call. So I called Susie. I was like, hey, I'm so sorry. I don't know. I got this email about something called like Frozen. Any chance we could do our thing another time? Because it was just, me doing overdubs or something. Usually it's, easier to move that kind of thing than like, I knew it said in the email full orchestra.
Yeah.
So I knew, okay, that they're not going to move the orchestra for me, but maybe I can move this other thing. But, if not, no big deal, Susie, I'll stay on your thing. And she goes, because she's an orchestrator, she knew like at how big it was going to be.
Yeah.
And she told me like, no, you need to do that.
Uh-huh.
And so, man, I thank her so much for that. She obliged, and, we moved our session. And then, I showed up at Warner Brothers to just not knowing what I was doing other than, I still don't know what I'm doing, but on the date, I didn't know, could be anything. And it was funny because the chart said like big power chords or something like that. So like I dialed up kind of like a rectifier sound, like big power chords. Mm-hmm. So this great engineer, David Boucher, was working on the session, and we did a few takes, and he came out to kind of the rhythm section area because it's a full orchestra kind of in the front, and then they always put the rhythm section in the back. And he's kind of scratching his head, looking at what I'm using. He's like, do you have like a little Tweed Deluxe or something? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? What's going on? He's like, oh, it's just not really like, that's not really like the thing. Like it should be, almost like Tom Petty. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, no worries. It said big distorted power chords. Yeah. So then I grabbed my telly and I put a capo on and just kind of, did that.
Did your Mike Campbell?
Oh, yeah. A little bit, just tried to put some of that sauce on there. And there is a part, funny, there's kind of like, you can kind of hear my Pete Townsend influences on there. There is a little part where I tried to sneak some of that in, just like that kind of thing in the pre-chorus. So, but yeah, and then we just, I think it was me on electric and George Deering on acoustic. We did like 10 million takes because they wanted to get a lot of video, I think. And I think Matt Chamberlain was on drums and Abe Sr. on bass, which, man, he's so musical. You can hear all these great, they actually sometimes will put it in the chart I've seen. Abe Woo, like going into the chorus, woo. It's like, this is great stuff, man. He's just the greatest.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's a killer band. And even, you leave that day going, wow, that was really fun. And then like months later, it turns into the, oh.
And in terms of the gear that you were using, was it the telly that you were using here for one of the layers, or was
no, it would have been that all parts telly. That I had.
All parts telly. Okay.
So it's funny, with the gear thing, I've always been kind of like, just trying to always make it as great as it can be, and also incorporate modern technology. And actually, when I moved here, like everybody else, I was kind of geeking out, like, what's Michael Thompson doing? What's Tim Pierce doing? What's Michael Landau doing? And at the time, I think it was popular to do that thing where you mic the amp and then send that signal to all your effects, and then you basically just say to the engineer, like, here's a stereo pair of XLRs. This is my sound. And when I first started getting these kind of like bigger calls, I very quickly realized that in that setting, they did not want to see that, because there's always like, first of all, I'm coming in, I'm an unknown quantity. I'm this kid, and these engineers would just be like, what is this? Like, you'd always show up and there'd be two 57s because they just figure you're going to bring your stereo rig with two like 112 cabinets, And in the beginning, I was like, no, really, you should try this. It's going to be great. It's going to work out. And then I just realized, like, okay, I need to just like kind of, at least in the beginning, sort of do, not make any waves, not rock the boat here. So I sort of put together a rig that, everybody would understand, and it's just it's still what I use today. It works great. So it's an amplifier head on a load, and then there's some pedals in front of it, and from the line out, it goes to an effects unit out in stereo to a power amp into two 112 cabinets, and that's like very clear. What's going on there. Yeah. And I even have the two cabinets are mismatched on purpose, because one is like very focused kind of bright sound, and the other is like warmer and more diffuse sounding. And I even like kind of wrote that on there because some of my engineer friends that I see all the time would be like, hey, remind me again. So I literally like kind of with tape, I've written on there like left, bright and closed back and stuff. So
okay, so one of them is an open back, one of them is a closed back. What speakers are in those?
The closed back has a vintage 30, and then the open back has a G12H30.
Great. And for this session, which amp did you use for?
This would have been the Aiken Saber, which I still have two of those.
Okay.
One at home and one in my cartridge rig that goes out. Yeah.
Awesome. And then processing, was that something that you did, or did they kind of do all of the wet effects?
Well, for like on Let It Go, it's pretty dry actually, the guitar sound, and so I think I tried to put just like a little bit of something on there just to give it a little bit more life. And I don't think, based on kind of their aesthetic, I don't think they added anything more.
Got it. And as far as like cables and stuff like that, I can see here just kind of from the studio, it looks like you are a Mogami guy. Yeah.
I am indeed. Yeah. I did a shootout one time, and for me, they were kind of consistently what I wanted to hear, and they hold up on the road and stuff.
Yeah. And so was that an all-day session or just?
Yeah, it would have been all day, just for the one song.
Right.
Pretty incredible.
And so so you did acoustic on there as well, or only electric?
No, George did the acoustic, and then I did
okay, but for the purposes of today, just to fill it out, we had you do some of the George parts.
Yeah, I guess I sort of looked at what we do today as like, if they had sent that to me, what might I give them back? You know, just to kind of fill it out.
Right. Because otherwise, in terms of the guitar load, it would be kind of sparse comparatively to the rest of the orchestration.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, I dig that. Well, man, it's such an iconic song, and any of us that have kids, we know how important this song and movie are, and are just kind of constant repeat in the household. We will get right back to the interview in just a moment, but I wanted to take a chance to talk to you about a service that I really love and use all the time, which is from our friends over at Sweetwater and their used marketplace called the Gear Exchange. Now, the Gear Exchange is a place where you can buy and sell used gear from other gear fanatics just like me and you. And I really love it because one key differentiator from all the other marketplaces out there that you can buy and sell used gear on is that Sweetwater allows you to maintain 100% of your earnings so long as you put your earnings onto a Sweetwater gift card as opposed to taking them in cash or PayPal or whatever else. Now, the cool thing about this is it allows you to get that extra almost 10% in some cases of earnings and to maintain those so that you can apply to the gear that you want and redeem it on stuff that you'd already be buying. And I can tell you, I'm kind of using this as a glorified layaway program where I sell the gear that I'm not using, I accumulate a nice big group of gift cards, and then I cash them in on other gear that I want. I've already bought 2 great pieces using the Gear Exchange. The first of which, I got a 1960s custom shop Stratocaster, very beautiful, gold hardware, white pick guard, a nice Inca silver aged, a beautiful relic neck. Really love this thing, plays great, kind of has a Robert Cray vibe, which I absolutely love. I was also able to trade in those gift cards for a beautiful Brian Setzer Smoke model signature Gretsch. I've been jonesing for a Gretsch for forever. Didn't have that in my arsenal. Was able to add that as a result of selling some used gear on the Gear Exchange. I was able to pay for both of these instruments fully and fund them completely from selling gear on the Gear Exchange and using those gift cards. So I highly recommend you check it out. You can start an account for free, get buying, get selling, and of course cash them in on some amazing gear available over at our friends at Sweetwater. Now back to the interview. But I want to transition into something that we all recently learned about, which is there's been a big change in the NBA. That's the National Basketball Association, for those that don't know.
You talking about me being recruited for them? Or?
Yeah, where they're having you playing point guard for the Lakers.
Exactly.
And NBA has just changed its kind of licensing and rights deal, and there's been an iconic music piece that's always been a part of the NBA since, I believe, the early 90s. And it's a song called Roundball Rock. And you happen to be the guitar player on
the new version.
The new version that, presumably if it has the same legs as the original, That's going to be another, 30 years of getting to hear that every time we fire up our NBA game and get to watch our favorite team. We're going to get to hear some Andrew Synowiec on that as well.
Sure.
So I'm wondering if you can kind of talk us through how you got the call for this, kind of the session, the gear, because it's a pretty rockin' remix. It's already been teased out on several
Right.
different sports radio shows and podcasts. So we got a little bit of that here, and we'll fill in a little piece of that so people can kind of see what that's all about. And even Saturday Night Live has done a little
True.
piece on
Yeah.
that, which we can
Hilarious.
show a little bit of here as well. But tell us about how this all came about.
Yeah, well, I got a text from my friend Tim Pierce, and he said, "Hey, I referred you to John Tesh for some session work."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Great, that sounds amazing." I know, being my age, I know who John Tesh is.
Yeah.
He's, of course, the host of Entertainment Tonight, and I knew that he had a music career too, so sounded interesting. And then, like 2 days later, I get a call from an engineer friend, Mike Arvold. He says, "Hey, there's this session coming up. John Tesh is going to re-record a bunch of his old hits, and I'm trying to get you on it." I'm like, "Great, that's two people." And it's funny because it's like one of those things where, like, sometimes in the music business, I think it takes like, multiple sources kind of saying like, try this person, because people are so reticent to try somebody new.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, great, that's two people, So ended up working out. We went into the studio. We did, I think, 2 days at East West, and did a whole bunch of his classic music. So then I get another call like, hey, he's got this other idea for Roundball Rock, except he wants almost like a Trans-Siberian Orchestra kind of thing. Like, can we just give you the score and let you like kind of play all the violin parts and all the trumpet parts and all that kind of stuff and like turn it into a guitar orchestra? So it's like, yeah, challenge accepted. By the way, they were like, and you have like 2 hours to do it.
So you had already recorded all this stuff at East West and kind of done an arrangement that he had already come up with, and then he kind of did an audible and said, "We got a 2-hour deadline."
Exactly. It was kind of like, he had this other, more traditional version where the strings are playing the melody and stuff like that, and the guitar is just kind of doubling the bass, doing like power chord stuff. And then it was kind of like, I just had this crazy idea. What if, and we had a hard out at 5 o'clock, and it's like 3 o'clock, But man, we got it done. I think the results are pretty great.
And that's what made the cut. That's what made the cut.
So at the end of all that, he was so excited. He goes, "Man, I'm gonna start this whole like new chapter with this guitar." He's calling it the shredded version.
The shredded version. And then that's presumably what's going to be playing now on all the
NBA
NBA
I think
games.
so. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a piece of you in every NBA game. And for that, because it's, you sent me sort of a copy of it from one of the radio shows that kind of, or was it a podcast that had aired?
Yeah, it's like some kind of sports, popular like podcast or something.
And so I got to hear it's pretty rocking comparatively, to the original. What were you using to kind of get all that sound? And presumably there's some layers to that. You had kind of like some power chords, and then you were kind of doing the.
Yeah, I did. We did that at an outside studio, so I used my other rig. And I did. I think I did all the power chord stuff with a Les Paul, and then all the lead stuff. I have a really great old PRS Custom 24. So I did the leads on that.
And then what kind of amp did you use?
For that rig, I have an Aiken amp that I like a lot. It's like a channel switching thing. It's got a really beautiful clean channel and then like a really heavy overdriven, saturated lead sound.
Was it kind of more of a Marshall type sound, or how would you kind of characterize the lead sound?
It's kind of Soldano-y or rectifier-y.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that.
In any sort of pedals or processing that you used for that, or did they do all that in post?
No, I that's a stereo rig, so I definitely had some delay and reverb on there, and then probably like, especially for the power chord stuff, I would use a boost, kind of like almost on the clean channel, but kind of pushed, cranked up. Yeah. And then for the leads, a lot of times I like to use an EQ to like boost, to actually cut bass and then boost, like, I guess it's essentially a treble booster. All
right. So for your booster, are you a classic like Boss GE7 guy? Are you a parametric EQ kind of guy?
I'm sort of an equal opportunity booster. Yeah, I have a GE7. In that rig, I have Earthquaker Devices 3-band EQ.
Okay.
Here at home, I have the Empress
Parody Q.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's
That's
awesome.
great. And they have that new one too. That's like
I
it's
know, I just
smaller.
saw that. Yeah,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's already become sort of an instant classic for the Nashville
Yeah.
guys. So
Yeah, it's cool because it has a low cut on it. Although I'll tell you, one thing I do with this, because I just saw it and I was checking it out. I do actually like to cut level a lot. Like if I'm playing a sound and the amp, there's no like distortion on the amp, but it's still breaking up a little bit too much.
Yeah.
With this one, you can cut the level into the amp, and it kind of cleans up in a really nice
Interesting.
way. Yeah.
Interesting.
Which I noticed. I don't think the new version does that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I was on Reverb yesterday, like checking it out.
Yeah. So then maybe this is the one.
Yeah.
The larger one is the one for you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm wondering if you can play a little bit of Roundball Rock for us, and we get to hear sort of this new arrangement. And I guess the season for now is over, but come October, we're gonna start hearing it again. So
right on.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Woo, man! First take. So, do you remember how many takes it was in the studio when you did that one?
Yeah, well, I actually have the score if we want to take a look. I mean, it's like really small print and stuff, and you can only see a few bars at a time anyway, which is good because I can usually only get through a few bars at a time without messing up. So we kind of did like little sections,
Well, I mean, here you it seemed like it was pretty seamless.
Thanks, yeah. And then also, it was good. Mike, the engineer, he's also a guitar player, so he had some great ideas about like, let's do a Brian May thing here. Let's put some, we did maybe a few passes of just like, okay, every time it goes into a new section, give me like, give me one of those or. Just to kind of ramp up the like sports energy.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it's perfectly fitting for the vibe, and cool. and I love the makeover. It's it's really awesome. Yeah. And for the sounds that we just got there, what do we have here for guitar?
This is something I bought on a whim. I saw when they came out, I was like, man, that's kind of interesting. It's an Epiphone Alex Lifeson Les Paul. And I'm kind of a Les Paul guy, and I'm also kind of a Floyd guy. I'm like a wannabe Floyd guy. Yeah. So it's a Les Paul style with a Floyd.
Yeah.
And it's got the full, like, whatever they call it, where you can go.
Kind of the contours.
Yeah, really, really easy.
It's got kind of a belly cut back there, too. Looks like.
Yeah. But they sold out, like, right away, and they were never in stock. And so it kind of fell off my radar. And then I was actually... doing some of my own, I was touring with my own project, and there's a store up in Atascadero called Lightning Joe's, I think.
Okay.
It's a really great, like, mom and pop, like, been there for, like, 40 years.
And Atascadero's kind of like near San Luis Obispo.
Yeah.
Paso Robles kind of
Yeah,
area.
exactly, out in California. So, it's like that whole thing of, like, you got your 2 hours on and 22 hours off. What are you going to do? Well, of course, guitar players... find the closest guitar store. Yeah. And went in there and, I'm just kind of tooling around and I'm like, that's that guitar. Let me check it out. Yeah. I checked it out. My buddy Jurgen Carlson was there too. So he was like, oh yeah, it sounds good. Yeah. He doesn't say much. So the fact that he was like, yeah, it sounds good. Yeah. I'm like, all right, I guess I should get it. Plus it's always nice to like shop at like mom and pop places.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely a lost art for brick and mortar.
So Lightning Joe's. They set actually that day they set it up for me with Elixir 10s and I used it on the gig that night. It was
Nice.
really, really fun.
And it should be said that you are a Elixir endorsing artist.
Very true. Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah. So what are typically your strings of choice when you're dealing with guitars? What do you like?
Usually tens. Yeah. For electric. Yeah.
And is there? I know they have like different versions, like the Nano Web and all this stuff. Is there a specific one that you're
mostly Nano Web, although I have some Opto Web, which is like, I guess it's all, I mean, it basically feels like a non-coated string. It's funny though, I've actually gotten used to the coated strings. I don't mind them. They kind of feel nice. They're a little bit softer on your fingers.
Yeah, well, there's certainly a lot of brands now that have just kind of just gone to them, permanently because of just the longevity, and also like I can understand from a retail perspective if they're just like sitting on the wall,
exactly,
like, I definitely I appreciate them because I like you, I have a lot of guitars, and even if you just are using traditional uncoated strings and you're not using them, they are just kind of always
I hate
dying.
that when it's like you pick up a guitar and it's like actually when I was back in school I had basically one guitar, actually the PRS that I used,
the CE24,
that I used to do Roundball rock. And there's a great guitar player down there who is sadly no longer with us, named Dan Warner. He's like the king of second guitar playing.
Yeah, I mean, he played on like a lot of, didn't like kind of like Jennifer Lopez, like Backstreet Boys, and
everything that was done in that era, in that was produced down there.
A lot of boy band pop stuff he did.
Yeah, but I mean, he's an incredible musician, an incredible guy.
And a producer too, right?
Yeah. But he came over one day. I mean, he was so nice. He came over to like help me with my rig and my sounds and everything. And he's like, well, let me see what you got here. Give me a guitar. And he picks up my guitar and he's like, dude, what's going on? Like, I'm going to need a tetanus shot. This is before I was using elixirs. It's before they even came out, I think. So yeah, it's definitely.
This is at University of Miami.
Yeah.
Well, produced a lot of great musicians.
Yes, yeah. They have a good track record.
Yeah. And so nano webs and same for acoustic guitars as well.
For the most part, I have a few. Sometimes you actually want more of like a dead sound, so I'll use like either Martin strings or kind of doesn't matter because I just leave them on there until like as long as possible, because you kind of want that like really dead sound. Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been really cool to kind of get the backstory on all this, and I look forward to kind of seeing it. And man, it must feel great, when you're getting to hear this, week in and week out. If you're a basketball fan, I'm a self-proclaimed Golden State Warriors fan, just because where I live, and where I'm from. Cool. But so cool. Yeah, that's really cool. Speaking of other things that are on television, or in this case, Netflix. You are featured heavily in the show Cobra Kai. Yeah. And a guy that we both know, Zach Robinson, America's favorite left-handed guitar player, as I call him. For sure. It had got you to play on a bunch of these songs, and they're super cool because obviously, like, Karate Kid is what it arcs back to, and that was a big 80s thing, and they've kind of maintained sort of the 80s shreddy sort of element as sort of a theme in terms of the scoring and music that's featured on it. And I wanted to play a song from the first season that I think is really great, called Quiver. But I want to hear about how you got involved with Zach and how you got involved with Cobra Kai. And I mean, that's one of the biggest hits on Netflix in terms of series right now. Yeah. So how did that all come about? Well, should we switch over guitars?
Yeah. Do we want to switch guitars? Yeah. What are we going to use for Cobra Kai?
So I'm going to use a few different things. I'm going to try and use, because we did all that stuff here.
Really?
So I'm going to try and use, the stuff that I use.
Same stuff?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Let's change guitars. Yeah. All right, so guitar change. Got a Les Paul.
Yeah.
And was this was what you used for a lot of this?
Yeah.
Nice. And anything special in terms of pickups? I mean, it looks kind of just like a 50s style Les Paul.
I had this thing done, like Reverend Guitars has a really cool thing where they have like a traditional tone knob, but then they have another tone knob where it's actually like a bass cut.
Okay.
So I had that done. So it's like, this is like a master bass cut, and I'll roll that off. Actually, it's funny, like, especially with like real gainy sounds, I find that actually a brighter sound from the guitar like really just cuts through more.
Yeah.
A lot of times with the Les Paul, you can get too much low end. So it's a really fun
kind of thins it out. Yeah. That's awesome. And then just, do you know what kind of pickups are in this thing?
I'm actually not sure because they were hand wired by
Okay.
this builder guy.
All right. Awesome.
But they're not super hot. They're just kind of vintage spec.
Yeah, kind of just a PAF style
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, beautiful guitar.
Yeah.
And do you remember what you used for amps on this?
Probably the Soldano. I like that crunch channel a lot. So not the super overdriven
Yeah.
channel, but like the cleaner,
Yeah,
slightly
yeah.
broken up
Yeah.
sound. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that on the Soldano, and that channel tends to take pedals better too, in my opinion. I don't know if you used any pedals for this or if it was
Actually, right now I'm using that same Empress boost pedal.
okay,
Yeah.
the parametric
Yeah,
EQ with the boost section of it. Okay.
Yeah, it's funny. It's actually an EQ pedal, but I'm thinking of it like a boost.
Yeah,
pedal,
yeah. Well, maybe we'll have to get you one of our Vertex boosts, very
Yeah,
clean
now
boost,
we're
push it a little
talking.
harder.
Yeah.
And so how did Zach, kind of get in touch with you about this, or were you already friends with him? And he
Yeah,
was doing
well,
his stuff?
so there's actually two composers on the
Right,
show,
Zach and then he's-
Robinson and Leo Bierenberg,
Right.
and they both came out of Chris Beck's camp. So Chris Beck is a huge film composer and
Yeah.
stuff, and so I knew them when they were working for Chris.
Yeah.
And so the two of them, Zach and Leo, they read in some trade publication, there's going to be this show, and at the time it was just a YouTube show.
Yeah.
Which they were trying to do like new content or whatever, and kind of everybody sort of wrote them off as like, whatever. But Zach and Leo were like, man, this show sounds like it'd be right up our alley. What if we just like did some music and sent it off to them? I'm sure there's no way like anything would ever come of it, but what have we got to lose? So they put together this little reel and they sent it off. Somehow they got in contact, info for the creators of the show, and they had no one doing the music. They hadn't even thought about it. And then this incredible, like perfect score, lands on their desk. And so that's how Zach and Leo got the gig. It just goes to show you, like, if you work, hard enough at something and go after what you want, you can, kind of do great things.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's such a great story, man.
Well, now they must feel vindicated, man, because again, that's one of the best performing shows on Netflix. And early on in that process, or after the first season came out, Zach had come to our showroom and had played some pedals and stuff like that. So we got to talk to him a little bit about it, and so cool. I'd love to hear a little bit of Quiver, which is just one of the pieces that's featured on Cobra Kai in the first season. And I don't know if it made another appearance in other parts, but yeah, I just think it's such I love the music of it. I watch it almost as much for that because it's got such an 80s kind of like shred vibe to it, and the kind of the pedigree of players that were involved in like Karate Kid. You got guys like Dan Huff and stuff like that playing on some of those theme songs and stuff like that in the originals. So I think it's really cool that it carries that tradition on with the style of music.
Yeah, it's really fun for me.
Well, let's hear it.
All right, cool.
Making that sustain earn its money.
That's right.
Yeah. Man, the layers are incredible. All the harmonized guitars and all that stuff. It's kind of
so
like
fun.
just embodies the perfect '80s thing, and bringing out a few Jacksons in here.
Gotta do it.
Floyd Roses.
Yeah.
It's all part of it. I love that you're bringing it exactly as it would have been in the original.
Yeah.
Man, so cool. Well, I'm so appreciative to get to hear all these parts and to see how it was done. And I'm a huge fan of the Cobra Kai series, so I feel
Cool.
like I'm living in the session right now, just getting to hear you do it. So we've covered a lot of the stuff that you've done for television, Netflix, NBA. I want to now move to some of the solo artists that you've worked with, and one in particular, Meghan Trainor.
Sure, yeah.
And the song is "Don't I Make It Look Easy." Now, I'm curious how you got the call to work with Meghan, which is, of course, one of her biggest hits that she's recorded, and about the gear session, all that good stuff. So how did it all come about?
Yeah, I mean, I just got a call from her producer. He said, "Hey, it's always like, can you get this to me, yesterday?" So, but that's all right. I like a challenge. So I did it really fast, and he had it kind of mocked up. Like many people, he plays a little bit of guitar. So he kind of had it mocked up with what he wanted. Kind of just do this, but better, and then add your own stuff.
Yeah.
And I tried to not go like overboard in terms of like crazy weird sounds and stuff. It just didn't seem to match, the vibe of this song.
Yeah. Well, it definitely has like an R&B feel to it, and then some of the arrangements a little bit more modern, but
I mean, I almost kind of thought of it as like a Motown thing. Like, what would it be like if back in the day you had like 3 guitar players? What would they do?
Right.
So that was kind of my concept for this.
Right. Yeah. So you're kind of a Ray Parker thing or something like that,
A little bit,
yeah. Yeah. So, and was she there for this, or was it just all here?
No, it was all here. Actually, just all me by myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all just like a remote thing. He sent you the tracks.
Totally just self-produced, kind of.
Did you have a sense that it was going to get like hundreds of millions of plays on Spotify when you were listening to it?
No, I mean, gosh, I wish I had a crystal ball. I mean, you kind of always hope, and you do your best no matter what.
Right.
It's turned out to be a really, really nice little thing.
Just as an aside, because you've done so many. I mean, we're covering a small part of a pretty massive and illustrious career here. When you play a song, how often have you been able to call it like, oh yeah, I think this is going to make it?
Never. I mean, I usually think like everything's going to make it.
Right.
Because you're pretty, especially after you worked on it, for a few hours.
Right.
It's like, I mean, it's not, I didn't write it. It's not my name on the, on the cover or anything.
Right.
But it's still, they're like your kids,
Right.
So you take ownership over it. You take pride in it and try and do your best. But then it goes out there in the world, and so I mean, a lot of times it's like that track doesn't even make it on the album it could be a million reasons. Yeah. So yeah.
Well, I mean, I have to think on some of the Disney stuff. At least you might have a sense like, oh, it's going to get exposure.
Yeah. Now I do. Now you can almost kind of tell with that stuff. Yeah.
Well, guitar wise, probably not a Jackson.
Probably not a Jackson.
What did you use?
So there's a kind of like almost like a bass line. It's a guitar, but it's doing what a bass might do. And I actually used a Jerry Jones baritone.
Wow. So Dan Electro.
Yeah. Right. What? Yeah. It's a Jerry Jones version of a Dan Electro.
Yeah. And then amp wise,
I have this company. Unfortunately, they're not in business anymore. I think he should have charged like 3 times the money, and he'd still be in business. But they're called Texotica amps, and I forget how I stumbled on them. But it's kind of like an old Tweed Fender Deluxe or something. I think it's only about 9 watts or 12 watts. I forget. But it's got that that thing where you can crank it right on the edge, so if you play hard, it kind of compresses on itself.
Right.
I've used that for a lot of different stuff. And then he actually made me an outboard spring reverb unit too.
Wow.
Which is it's like the most like syrupy, drippy spring reverb thing. Really sounds killer. So I have that reverb going into the front of that.
And no pedals?
Maybe just like some little like just gain structuring kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But essentially a clean sound.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'd love to hear you play a little bit of it. Do a little guitar switch and
Cool, yeah.
hear it.
Sounds good.
Don't I make it look easy, baby, when I do what I do. Don't I make it look easy, baby, I'm fooling you. I just posted a picture, read all the comments, all these good ones, if I'm being honest, I might have spent an hour on you. You won't ever see me cry, 'cause I've got a filter for every single lie. Don't make it look easy, baby, when I do what I do. Don't I make it look easy, baby, I'm fooling you. Don't I make it look easy, baby, I'm good at keeping my cool. Don't I make it look easy, baby, I'm fooling you. You think I live that lavish life, happy life, but you don't know I'm up.
And one thing I'm noticing here, Andrew, is on the back of your guitars, you have them dated and the string gauge.
Right.
So is this presumably the last time you changed strings?
Yeah, actually, that's pretty sad. Yeah.
So that's 10/30/23.
So almost a year ago.
So in October.
I was about to do a tour for my record right around then, so that makes sense. Yeah.
So one thing that I think is really interesting about this is I'm just looking at these strings. If you could turn it back over, these are silky smooth. And
Yeah.
this is, I think, probably the greatest testimony to why
really is,
people would use elixirs is they're almost a year old and they look and feel
And sound.
as though it were day one.
Yeah. Pretty
That's-
amazing.
That's amazing.
Pretty amazing. Yeah.
So I could get why somebody in your shoes who is a professional making their living every day using these instruments does not want to be burdened with having to change their strings. If this were a regular set of strings, this would have been, I would
Forget
think,
about it.
10 to 12 times at least
Yeah.
between that date and today.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing.
So and that was at when the producer hires you for this. Do they
Yeah.
sort of dictate the number of layers, or you just sort of like it's at your discretion? How many?
It's usually at your discretion.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, the thing to do is like to really wow them,
Yeah.
Like I try and put as much paint on there as I can.
And then they can just subtract whatever they need.
Yeah, I mean, without going like totally overboard, where it's like clearly this is not in the scope of what this song should be.
Yeah.
That's why I was kind of picturing it like, okay, this is what can I do with this where there's layers, but it fits the vibe of the song,
Right.
too, So
And for let's say the aspiring session guitarist out there, when you're delivering tracks in terms of like effects and processing, how are you kind of treating that, in terms of what's printed versus what's
that's
not?
a good question. So I actually I learned, I guess I would say I learned the hard way like a long time ago to have like a backup, which for me is I always split the signal. So I simultaneously go to the amp and then I also go to a DI.
Yeah.
And that's what I give them like 99% of the time.
Mhm.
Because I give them the amp with everything I hear. It's a real amp, it's outboard gear or whatever. Just what we're hearing now. But then I'm also recording a DI that's totally clean. So like if for some reason they want that or they want to change the sound, they can.
They could reamp it or do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
And depending on the situation, sometimes I don't even send that because it's like I don't want to give them the option,
Right.
But it has saved me a few times, I would say.
Right. Or if they didn't like it, at least you have it too. You can do the
Yeah,
reamp and
exactly.
stuff like that
yeah.
too.
I mean, that comes in handy if it's like really a performance where it's like, man, it's going to be hard to replay that or something. Yeah, it really helps for that.
Yeah, and I know now you got your Strat, but you also did a layer with a Silvertone.
Right, yeah.
And so what's kind of the place where you would use something like that?
That guitar I use, it has flat wounds on it. So I use that kind of anytime I want something to sound old.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of, it's weird. Certain instruments have like more of a neutral sound, which is not a bad thing. Sometimes that's what you want because you can kind of, you can really dictate where the instrument goes tonally. Yeah. And then other things like that Silvertone or even the Strat, I mean, it really sounds like Stratty. You plug it in, it's like, it's kind of helping you in a way. It's sort of like, in a good way, painting you into a corner. You know?
Yeah, and again with the amplifier here, I think it's kind of the perfect type of vibe. Again, going
Cool.
from Motown and kind
Yeah,
of more
yeah,
of a late '50s
yeah.
style Fender amp, and then using that reverb in front of it. And I've mentioned in other videos that there is a distinct sound from a recording standpoint when you're taking a reverb tank and going into the input of an amp
Yeah.
versus using, let's say, a '60s Fender where the reverb is after the preamp.
Right.
They sound fundamentally different, and that splash is kind of quintessential to the sound.
It really is.
Yeah, and so you really nailed it here, and I appreciate that you painstakingly kind of crafted the sound to sort of match
Yeah,
the
thanks.
vibe.
Well, it's funny, I think when you speak about like effects and things like that, guitar players tend to think about, it's like they go to like the 80s or something. But like there's a way to get character to use your word, like spill onto the track. That doesn't have to be, I mean, I love the 80s, but it can also be 60s or 50s or whatever. And I've definitely tried to like, search out pieces of gear that like, okay, it might only do one thing, but it does that one thing really, really well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just try and find ways of like bringing out, as much character as possible, even if it's only, 3 guitars or something, or 1 or whatever.
And then if you're playing, obviously this is different for sessions because you can sort of craft each individual sound.
Yeah.
If you're doing a live performance or you need to bring something like this, what do you sort of rely on for your kind of processing effects for wet stuff, reverbs, delays, modulation?
It really depends on the setting. So I have a whole, like, I guess you would say like 90s style rack and amplifier that goes for like movies and stuff like that out of the house. And then I have a couple of different pedal boards. One is more like, the kind of major food groups pedal board. And the other is more like if I'm playing with my band or something. It's more just about getting a really nice overdrive sound. And then I have, it's actually split where there's just one overdrive board and one board with some wet stuff from Strymon. And I usually put that board next to me so I can kind of mess with it in real time. You know? That's really fun.
Yeah, because I feel like I've always seen you as kind of being a Strymon guy for the pedal boards that I've seen you use. And are you using like what are you using for like from them as far as like delays, reverbs, and stuff? Like
the one board has a timeline on it, and then the other one I have their compadre. Love that compressor, and I'm using it for a volume pedal as well. And then I have a separate like wet board that has the Blue Sky and the Volante. Okay. And it's fun. I like to put that one next to me and just like, as I'm playing, I kind of mess with it and kind of blend stuff in. Yeah.
It's kind of amazing when you think of pedals like, Blue Sky, Timeline. Like sometimes I forget that these have been around for like more than 10 years and they still have such relevancy in terms of, how ubiquitous they are on every guitar player's board. And they truly did sort of carry the torch of sort of what at the time, like with Line 6, like the DL4 and how just everywhere that was. The Timeline has certainly replaced that. And it'll be interesting to see now that they've done a sort of a new edition of the Big Sky reverb that has the bigger digital display. Yeah. I have to think that we're not long for a Timeline that maybe has the similar, display and features and things like that. So it should be interesting. It's been really cool to see how they've evolved from, the early days of just having they had like a smaller compressor that was not, and then kind of bringing out the El Capistan, et cetera. So
they do good work.
They do. And the local heroes here, just not too far up the road. Yeah. So with Meghan all wrapped up, I want to move to another piece that you did with one of the most iconic rock and roll bands of all time, The Who, and get to hear the stories about how that all came about. And that's all primarily played, it's acoustic, right?
Yeah, nylon string. Yeah.
All nylon string acoustic. So I'm really anxious to hear about that, but we need to do a little guitar change and then we will come back and get into the discussion.
Cool.
All right. Nylon acoustic. Yeah. And the song is Break the News. So did you hear from Mr. Daltrey himself on this one, or how did this come about? Because you're you're contending with rock and roll royalty with Pete Townsend as the ordinary.
He's done some things on the guitar.
Yeah. So how did this happen?
Yeah, well, so I can remember I was driving under the speed limit. and I had hands-free cell phone, of course.
Right. I was
definitely
wondering,
not
like
speeding.
with the song "Lead Foot,"
Yeah,
which is on your on your solo album. I was wondering if that was
it's a little
a biographical.
autobiographical,
Yeah.
yeah, autobiographical, no pun intended. But yeah, I got this. I see, the phone rings, and I can see like it's this like kind of major contractor in town, and it's just somebody that works in the office. Hi, we were wondering if you play claw hammer nylon. And I go, and I'm, in the space of a millisecond, I'm thinking, claw hammer nylon, what does that mean? I mean, I know what like claw hammer banjo is. I mean, it's kind of like finger picking, so presumably that on a nylon string guitar. I guess I could do that. And then of course, I immediately respond, "Oh, sure, yeah, no problem. I know exactly what that is. I do that." Like, and and they're like, "Okay, great. Yeah, we think we might have something for you. I'll send you a follow-up email." And I go, "Okay, cool. By the way, what's it for?" And they go, "The Who. I guess it's a rock band or something." And I'm like, "What?" Like, like driving all the side of the road. And they're like, "Yeah, I don't know. Well, we'll follow up via email, maybe." I'm like, "Whoa, what?" It's like so random. And then sure enough, later that afternoon, I get an email like, essentially like, "Hey, they're working on this record. We've been doing orchestra here in LA, even though Roger and Pete are back in London. And there's this song that Pete's brother had written. And when he wrote it, he kind of tempted up with this guitar part. But he doesn't really play that way, and neither does Pete. And they need somebody to get this thing done like ASAP. And then there's just one other kind of bone of contention here. Would you mind recording just a little snippet of video for them to see before, we officially hire you?" And normally I would kind of be like, really? Like, come on. But for The Who, I'm like, hell yeah, like, so I actually found that video. Maybe we can play it.
Yeah, we'll cut it in here so you can see a little bit of what Andrew submitted as his audition, so to speak.
And actually, it was funny because at the time, I mean, it's look, when you're in that situation, you're just thinking like, I gotta get this session, man. Like, what can I do? So at the time, that kind of like acoustic style of playing where there's like you're tapping the guitar and hitting it, like Khaki King, I think, does that kind of stuff. That was like really popular. And I'm thinking like, well, claw hammer nylon, is that what they mean? Like, so I sort of just came up with this thing that incorporated like, some of the hitting the guitar, some clearly like fast finger picking stuff, and just kind of like, but kind of bluesy, like, just like, I don't know, here's the kitchen sink in like a little 10-second clip. And I sent it off, and then a couple hours later I get another email like, "Okay, it's official, like here's the details. Go to this address." And then they sent me a Dropbox link of just the guitar part, nothing else, no click, no drums, no bass, no vocals, just an isolated acoustic guitar part. And I kind of went, okay, well, it's not a lot of context to that, but I want to make sure I'm prepared and stuff. So I made like a little chart, so at least I would have some kind of roadmap so that when I went in there, I could kind of speak intelligently. I even like kind of numbered the bars, thinking like, okay, hopefully the bars and beats will line up in Pro Tools if I need to punch in or something. And remember, I showed up at the producer's home studio, and you could tell it was like that point in the record where it's like, we just got to get this thing finished. There's really very little in the way of like pleasantries or anything. Right. Just kind of sat down and I kind of pulled out my chart just so I could kind of have a clue. And they're like, let's just check the headphones, and you'll hear 8 clicks, and then you start playing. I'm like, okay, get the headphone mix real quick and kind of sit in front of the mic. And then sure enough, I heard 8 clicks, and I start playing the thing. And I'm looking at my chart, and I go, I think, now, this is the first time now that I'm hearing anything besides just guitar. And I go, I think this is where the verse happens. And then sure enough, like we get to like bar 9 or whatever, and on my headphones, I hear for the first time, Roger Daltrey singing this song, and
Yeah.
it was just like, you know, crazy
Right.
feeling. You know?
Right. Right. So was this the guitar that you used?
This was not the guitar. I have another nylon. There's a builder named Greg Brandt, and his assistant, or I guess, you know, understudy, whatever you call it,
Apprentice.
apprentice. There you go.
Yeah.
His apprentice built that guitar. I think they're going by the name Peace Walker guitars now.
Okay.
That's a really cool sounding nylon string. Yeah.
Nice. And I presume it was just, you know, was it a ribbon mic, or what kind of stuff were you remember?
Yeah, I'm sure they had a few mics, and I think I did it once, and then maybe like doubled it on the choruses and like capo on the bridge kind of thing.
Okay, cool. Well, will you play a little bit
I would love to.
of what you did,
I
and
would
of
love
course
to.
we could supplement that with your audition team.
Yeah, for sure.
And I should name, just for the audience, because of Andrew's setup for recording acoustic, we're going to change camera angles here and be shooting him this direction so that we can really see clearly what he's doing. And, you know, we got a beautiful set of Royer mics here, endorsed by Royer, in fact.
Yes, I love Royer mic.
So you're a 121 fanatic, or what?
121, 122, whatever it takes. No,
Royer
they're great. The Royers, just, I call them like, it's sort of like reality, but a little bit better. You know, they're just really like very musical sounding.
And
like,
is this also what you use on your electric setup as well? We use Royer mics. Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes like Royer in a 57.
Right. It's just
50,
crazy how that's
55.
become the thing.
It's the thing. Yeah, it really works.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, let's regroup, get it set up, and I can't wait to hear it.
Cool.
I love the voicing there, especially the C.
That's a Dan Warner
That's a
voicing,
good.
actually.
Oh yeah.
I hear it.
Yeah, he likes to get those the nice open strings, and
So cool.
And was that what dictated to you, or was that just your decision to voice, or do you remember?
I honestly don't remember. I want to say I tried to cram in something.
That doesn't feel like a Pete Townsend type of sensibility, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I got to say, you know, my first guitar was a Yamaha classical, you know, like kind of, you know, beginner's student model.
Yeah.
I used to come home from school and like just run off the bus and grab that guitar and sit in front of this Who video and would just watch it from start to finish with the guitar. I mean, I couldn't even play, but I had the guitar in my lap and I'm like watching Pete Townsend. So like the circle, you know, like that the element of like starting that way and then like being able to play, you know, classical guitar on one of their songs is like mind blowing.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. I can't imagine getting the call from the rock and roll royalty like that. It's absolutely insane. So to complete our performance aspect of today's conversation, I want to finish on your latest record, Fun, which is available on Spotify, Apple Music, all the places where people can find music. and focus on the song Leadfoot, one of my favorite tunes from that record. Love the guitar works, absolutely amazing. You've got some great musicians that are on there too, and like to get into that and hear a little bit more about the development, the tones, the gear, and all that good stuff.
Sounds good.
So making a guitar switch, going to your own music, tell me about, clearly this is the guitar must have been conceived on if we're using this one now.
Well, not necessarily, but this is the one that it was played on. Yeah.
So like, was this stuff that you kind of like wrote out in notation, or were these sort of like jam things that you kind of adapted to songs, or like, how did you decide on what was going to make the cut?
That's a good question. I mean, they're all kind of like melodies that I had kicking around in my head, and I do write them out mostly so that you can give them to somebody else,
right? And
very quickly have them, translated into music,
right?
And how did they make the cut? Really, it's just like writing a singer-songwriter record. I think I wrote 20 or 30 songs, and then picked the best ones. I think we recorded 12, and then I picked. There were 8 that kind of, I felt like, okay, that's a statement that kind of all goes together. Yeah. And that is what became the record Fun.
Yeah. And you've released other records before this?
Yeah. So this is my, I guess I would say, 3rd release. Before that, I had Second Story, which is a similar kind of like instrumental. I've sort of been calling it like Jeff Beck meets Larry Carlton, at Woodstock or something like that. So some psychedelic elements. Yeah. There's some jazz harmony, but like kind of a rock funk feel.
Yeah.
And then before that, I did an ambient record that I actually just did here, mostly just because I kind of wanted to put something out, Yeah. And it felt like a slightly easier lift to just go, well, whenever I have time, I'm going to come. It might be real late at night. It might be real early in the morning. I'm going to come in here and just kind of throw paint, at the wall and just kind of create something.
Yeah.
So, and ambient music kind of lends itself to that.
Sure.
That's called Swim in the Sea. That's out there.
We'll make sure that for all of Andrew's work in the description that we've got all this listed so you can see where you could download, stream,
all the places. Yeah.
So for Fun and in particular for Leadfoot, was when you conceived kind of the basic structure, were you just using drum machines, or were you playing your own bass and then you brought in other people, or how did you kind of, what was the order of events?
Most of this stuff I can sort of like conceive in my head, like, okay, like for this song Leadfoot, I really wanted to have something that captured the spirit of like the guitar heroes that I grew up on, like Joe Satriani or Eric Johnson or Steve Morse, and have really a song that just kind of knocked you over the head with just like, I mean, pardon the pun, but like how fun, guitar music can be.
Yeah.
And I think there's like sort of an ode to like Cliffs of Dover, between the melody or the feel or whatever.
Yeah.
So I knew that I wanted something that had that kind of vibe to it. And then, I sort of would mock it up in Pro Tools, either play the bass or something, or program drums. But usually, honestly, it's like if you hire the right musicians, it's like you almost don't even have to say anything and they know what to do. So like versus spending days with my bad drum programming, I'd rather just get in a room with some human beings and kind of make stuff happen.
So who did you hire to accompany you on this?
Man, I had the dream team. Just a killer band. So on drums, I had Gary Novak. Mm-hmm. He's played with everyone from Alanis Morissette to Chick Corea.
Yep.
Just can kind of go anywhere. And I sort of grew up like listening to some records that he'd done. So it was pretty amazing to have him. And then on bass, I had Jurgen Carlson. Mm-hmm. He plays with Government Mule and Warren Haynes for many, many years.
Yes, the European sensation.
Yeah, he's incredible. It's almost like having another guitar player in the band. And actually, after I was going through, we recorded everybody in a room together playing live. And when I came back to kind of check out, like, okay, so what did we get? I mean, I knew it when it was going down, but really when I listened back, he's just like really just playing with me, like really interacting so much.
And was that did he do that as an overdub, or did he?
No. We did it all live.
Okay.
Yeah. And then on keys, Kerry Frank, he's incredible. Really, he just played Hammond organ on the whole record. He's played with like Tedeschi Trucks, Social Distortion, and he's got his own thing.
Yeah.
And then on percussion, Pete Corpola, who I know from a lot of like movie sessions.
Yeah.
He's like a really creative player. It just kind of goes again, like all these players can kind of just go like stop on a dime and turn and just really like very improvisatory kind of thing, even within the framework of like this is like a rock groove. I kind of like to always like marry those two things. Not have it be super clinical, but also not have it be so far out that your average person can't just enjoy it.
Yeah, and I get that. I think it's very accessible, and the guitar tones clearly are amazing. I remember when it came out, I had texted you and I said, "What amp are you using?" And I think you said you used a Soldano.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. This Hot Rod 50 Plus.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of like the junior SLO, so to speak.
It is. Yeah.
Or at least now there actually are smaller SLOs
Right,
that like do less, but that was sort of like for the original Soldano owners. Kind of
back in my day.
And is that like an amp that you've had since you?
Yeah. I got that new. It was like really the first like serious piece of gear I got. I mean, it just goes to show you buy something quality.
What year do you think you got that?
Probably 95, 96.
Oh, it's like before you went to like music school.
Oh yeah. I remember because I showed up at the University of Miami, which is like kind of a jazz school, with this Soldano like bright red half stack.
Yeah.
And I know everybody was like, who the hell is this kid? It's funny. Like, you do not belong here.
Well, I mean, it's withstood the test of time and has made it around with you. I'm wondering if we can play a little bit of the track and hear some of the parts and with this amazing Les Paul here.
Totally.
Nobody has the balls to detune their E string.
What's the worst that could happen?
So in live, how do you get it back?
That's a good question. Usually, I mean, I actually do that often. I sort of did it one night, like, what the hell? And then I did think, how am I going to get back? But like usually, like if there's an organ solo or something, you just take a moment.
Right. Yeah, I love it though. Like, I
mean, why not?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, and I could listening to it with your sort of analysis of like Eric Johnson and talking about like like a Larry Carlton thing, like I could hear kind of in like the second section there where you kind of go into more of like a Larry Carlton type of thing, and then I totally got the kind of the Eric Johnson, kind of the melodic thing,
right? Yeah, for sure, yeah.
I love that. Yeah, it's good to kind of contrast the way that you envisioned it versus kind of like how I had set it up in my head.
Right.
So kind of filled in a few gaps for me. But yeah, absolutely love that. It's so cool. And again, we'll have all of the songs from Fun in addition to all the other records all listed in the description if people want to check out some of Andrew's work. Well, Andrew, I'm so appreciative that you took us through all this great music that you've played on. And again, just a small cross section of all of the stuff that you've been playing on for decades now.
My pleasure.
And I really think that your work and your technique and artistry, you're really sort of the next gen session guitar player. Like most of the guys that we focused on, the music that they've made was primarily in the 70s and 80s and maybe a little bit into the 90s, but we haven't had the privilege yet to really talk to somebody who's making a lot of music now and contemporary music. So it's been really cool to kind of get to hear the contrast in your approach.
Thank you.
And what's old and what's new,
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure and an honor. I mean, most of those guys that you've interviewed are just complete heroes of mine. So
Yeah,
it's pretty
yeah.
cool to be mentioned.
Well, and all of them, they know you. They speak about
Oh,
you
man.
reverently, and part of the reason that this interview was able to happen is because people, are saying, yeah, you should really talk to Andrew.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
So I want to complete today, if you don't mind, by moving to a thing that we try to do with all of our guests, where we show them some pictures
Oh, boy.
and footage, in many cases, of themselves from days past, and get their reactions and get some behind the scenes stories. So I hope you'll indulge us and allow me to
Okay.
show you some of that.
Cool.
All right. So a few photos here to start
boy.
off. The first of which is a younger, cleaner
Yeah.
shaven,
Yes.
shorter haired version of Andrew.
I remember that guy.
So it looks like you got some rack gear here, maybe some things that look familiar
Yeah.
in terms of the Echo Pro. You got your Furman. It looks like you got a Bogner 112 cabinet
Yeah.
up there. Maybe, I don't know, is that a Sir? Is that, I can't exactly tell what
That
you
is
got.
a Floyd Rose guitar, actually. Yeah, but they were making guitars at one point.
Floyd Rose was making, what was this amp back here? I thought that maybe was like a Badger.
Oh no, that's the Aiken amp.
Oh, that's the Aiken
yeah,
amp, okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so this is a Floyd Rose guitar with a Floyd Rose tremolo.
Of course.
And what kind of pickups are in that thing? Do you remember?
I think they wound them. Yeah, they're proprietary.
Mr.
Floyd-
Rose
yeah,
did it himself.
yeah.
And was this a guitar that got a lot of work in the
This
section?
was my first attempt at Hollywood, LA, big city life, big endorsement time.
What year do you think this would have been?
2004. Yeah,
Wow.
20 years ago. Crazy.
So is this this is when you first moved to town?
Yeah.
And were you using this guitar because it just sounded great, or you thought this is the vibe that people wanted?
I think I took that picture for them to put on their website,
Okay.
and then they quickly went out of business right after that. So
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's related.
And what kind of rig were you using when you first came to town?
I had that Aiken amp. I met Randall Aiken at NAMM, and I played that amp, and it really knocked me out. It's just got a killer clean sound and a really killer overdrive sound.
Are they still around?
Theoretically, but I think it's, it's hard being a one-man shop.
Yeah. Where are they based?
He was in South Carolina or Georgia or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was the rig and Bogner cabinets.
Yeah. Well, I had literally that head and that cabinet, and then the Line 6 stuff, I think somebody actually gave me, and I forget exactly what I was doing. I think
Did you have, were those two Echoes, or was an Echo and a Mod? Or
Echo and a Mod, which I still have, and they're
Yeah.
great, but I think I used to have to run them in the front of the amp, which obviously gets weird on the distorted side. But
Yeah.
then actually, yeah, I had a G major that I put in the loop. Yeah, I remember that.
Okay.
And then I had a little pedal drawer too.
Nice.
Yeah, that was my rig. I would take that to gigs. I remember, literally the first gig I ever did, Otmaro Ruiz was on keys, and he goes, I'm making my 7th trip to the car to load in my rig or whatever, this huge pedal board and stuff, and he's like, bro, next time I see you, you're gonna be just using a wah pedal or something, man. You're gonna get tired of moving all that gear. He was kind of right.
Yeah. So it got consolidated from there.
Yeah, I think I eventually bit the bullet and just got a pedal board.
Nice.
Yeah, it's kind of evolved over the years.
And then this picture below seems
Yeah.
to be a larger rig, a big rack. It looks like you have a ground control, or
Yeah,
something like that, and then a big guitar rack over here with Gretches, and looks like maybe that's that PRS.
that's
you
the
mentioned.
PRS. Yeah, this is pretty much what I still use.
What year do you think this would have been taken?
I remember this picture because it was myself and also on guitar, 2 guitars, Eric Walls.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, he's killing. He's so good.
Thumb pick.
Yeah. So it was the 2 of us, and I remember we were freezing cold. It was at United, and the AC was it was just freezing.
Yeah.
So both of us were just like trying to be next to our amps for warmth or something. But yeah, so that's also that Aiken amp, and then another G major with 2 shelves of pedals.
And was this one that one of LA's finest rig builders made for you, or did you do it yourself?
Something like that. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. And what's the story with this telly? Is this the same one that's up on the wall
Oh
here?
no, that is a I think it's an all parts telly that I got at the amp shop. Tina there, who does their work, on the guitars and stuff, had put it together. I think mostly just to show off those pickups, which I believe are Lawlers.
Okay, nice.
But I remember I was just looking for like kind of a traditional telly, and I went in and just played it. And I was like, "Hey, what's the story with this guitar? How much is it?" And the owner, the owner there,
The Russian?
yeah, no, not for sale. But everything's for sale in Hollywood. So I walked out with a guitar.
Yeah, nice. And is this an Aiken here? Or
Yeah, I have two of them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, they're terrible. No one should buy one. If you have one, you should sell it to me for cheap.
All right, now
boy.
here we got young Andrew,
Mm-hmm.
and I can see here that you graduated from the Yamaha nylon string.
That was my first electric.
And you got kind of an SG like Epiphone here.
Yep. Angus Young, he was my guy.
He was your guy.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So as a formidable guitar player, young and formidable, getting into electric guitar, how many years did you have to put in on the Yamaha acoustic before your folks
kind of a lot, like 2 or 3, I would say. Yeah. But although my older brother, I have 2 older brothers, and one of them played guitar too, so I kind of would like steal his electric when he wasn't looking.
Okay.
Yeah. He had this like, I don't know, like a Sears guitar or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. You can also tell, even from a young age, I had a keen fashion sense. So.
Right. And how long did this guitar last you?
Well, I had to sell it to buy, I think I bought an Ibanez RG something 770. I wish I still had that guitar. It was killing. So, but it's like when you're young,
What year do you think this was?
Maybe 90, 91, something like that.
So how old would you have been then?
Probably 11.
Okay.
Yeah, that seems about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Now here,
Oh yeah,
it looks like a bloodied Tom Anderson guitar. Is it a Tom Anderson?
Yes, that is.
All right,
yeah.
you can kind of tell because Tom has a certain look to his bridges and the knobs that he chooses. But I don't know that I've ever seen a bloody Tom Anderson. It seemed like such an
it's
interesting.
kind of a juxtaposition, isn't
it? Yeah. And so I was curious about how this came to be.
I need to come up with some crazy story here.
It was a knife fight in the parking lot.
I think that's what it was. Yeah, you should have seen the other guy. Yeah, the things we do for our music, man.
Yeah. The tone. Nobody gets through unscathed when it comes to good guitar tone.
That's exactly right.
So just have a hard gig.
I think I was probably just sloppy right hand technique or something like that. Yeah.
This is what happens, kids, when you don't observe good technique.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Andrew, I can't thank you enough for inviting us here to your studio today and for taking us through kind of a small group of songs from your career. And just thank you for everything that you're doing for music. You're keeping tone alive and using some amazing instruments to do it. And it's really inspiring to be here and see you making the music. So thank you so much for everything that you do. And man, I look forward to seeing what's next.
Cool. Likewise. Thanks.